Hey guys, so welcome back to my channel. So a lot of you guys said that apparently I haven't read a book in my entire life. Well, you're wrong. This whole video here is just to prove you wrong because I have read a book. And again, this whole video is here to prove you wrong. So I actually picked a literary book called Great Expectations. I actually have some background information for you. So, this was the 13th novel that Charles Dickens wrote. It was also the second novel wrote by him that was written in the first person. And if you don't know who Charles Dickens is, I feel bad for you. He was actually a really good author. He wrote some other books. I don't know if you've heard of them, but Oliver Twist and Christmas Carol. I mean, who hasn't heard of those? Anyway, to get going, to talk about what I need to talk about as a good book reviewer. Again, Great Expectations was an amazing book. And yes, I did read it. I didn't just look up a summary online. I read it because I'm smart. Anyway, so here's some spoilers, kinda. I'm gonna tell you a little bit of the plot. So it revolves around this boy named Pip. He's an orphan. His parents died when he was really young. So he lived with his sister and her husband named Joe, who's a blacksmith. He eventually becomes Joe's apprentice, which I think is kind of cool. Anyway, basically, he kind of just changed himself for this girl, Estella, who was not into him at all. Anyway, so he went to London and abandoned his whole family just for this girl, right? Who would do that? But, so, she didn't reciprocate his feelings. Turns out he's actually a really good poet. He met this dude named Herbert. Herbert's pretty cool. He became his best friend. In the end, I mean, his sister dies kind of in the middle of the book, which is kind of sad. It turns out to be this old dude who killed her, but that's not really important. I don't want to tell you anything else because I don't really want to spoil the ending. The ending was really good, by the way. So, some themes we need to cover in the beginning of the book. So there's this convict, right, who just got out of prison. He just escaped. And he kind of forced Pip to bring him food. Anyway, so he forced Pip to bring him food. And the next day was actually Christmas. So the next day, on Christmas, Pip brought him food. And Pip described the way that he ate was very similar to that of a dog. So I kind of saw this as a theme of greed. Like, yeah, you just got out of jail. Of course you want food, but you don't have to be so greedy about it. Anyway, another theme would be affection and social class, which kind of go hand in hand, actually. So Pip changed his social class just for this girl, Estella, who didn't even like him. So again, this goes hand in hand because he had affection for her and changed his whole social class for her. Literally abandoned his family and moved to London for her. Yet she was stubborn and I didn't like her. But later, Pip realizes that he was kind of rude. And he decided that he doesn't need to be all big and like a gentleman. Okay, so I'm going to get more in depth with the characters. So there's the main character, obviously Pip, who in the beginning I think was about 13, but then he really fast jumped into the age of 18 and then really fast into the age of 21, and then now he's 23. I don't know how old he is when he gets sick. I'm pretty sure he's still 23. He might be a little bit older because they passed December and then they passed March, but I'm pretty sure he's 23 when he gets really sick. That was a spoiler, sorry. So Pip was this orphan. He lived with his sister, who was called Mrs. Joe because she married someone named Joe. So, Mr. and Mrs. Joe. Joe was really nice to Pip, but Mrs. Joe was like really mean and kind of beat him, and there was abuse. And then, so Joe's a blacksmith, and Pip became Joe's apprentice, per se. And, I mean, it was cool, but he really wanted to impress Estella, who was the niece or adoptive daughter of this old lady named Mrs. Havisham, which Miss Havisham's really weird because the first time that he went over to her house, he was leaving and he saw her hanging from this tree or something, from this board. So I thought she was a ghost at first, but I was like, no, because other people can see her. But then he goes back again, and then he sees a ghost again in the same place. And then closer to the end, he sees Miss Havisham hanging again. And then he goes to check on her, and she ends up being on fire. And he gets burned. I don't know. It was really confusing. I'm still not sure what the heck Miss Havisham is, if she's a witch or whatever, but Miss Havisham adopted this girl named Estella. And Estella is basically this... I don't like her. She's just too mean and not very nice. And is very stubborn and full of herself. So, back home there's this girl named Biddy who Pip really wants to like, but like can't because they've been friends forever. But Biddy secretly likes him. Biddy kind of just, she's just a minor character. We don't need to worry about her. But when Pip is in London, he meets this guy named Herbert, and they become really good friends. Yeah, it's cool. And Herbert is funny. They act like teenagers with each other, even though they're like 23. But, well, they made a fart joke, which is hilarious. They asked if someone was gonna cut the cheese, and then called him like a funny name, like Grim something. I don't know. Anyway, so the reason I like Charles Dickens is because he pulls things together that you wouldn't expect to pull together. So it turns out that the person who is paying Pip to become a gentleman in London ended up working with this guy who actually ended up almost marrying Miss Havisham, but they stole all of her money, which is hilarious. And then it turns out that the convict from the very first beginning ends up being the person who's actually paying Pip to become a gentleman. And it turns out his name is Magwitch, and Magwitch actually ends up being the father of Stella. Yeah, he thinks that his daughter was killed by his wife, named Molly, who is actually a servant now, which is hilarious. So Molly and Magwitch actually have a daughter. Who knew? Anyway, Magwitch ends up dying. Mrs. Joe dies. A lot of people die in this. Okay, so that was pretty much it for my book review on Great Expectations. I really do recommend it for people who are interested. It's, again, really interesting. I hope that my review enlightened you and made you interested in literature books. And yes, I can read. I don't get why people are so surprised by that. Thanks so much for watching, and just remember that if you want to talk about books, I'm your girl. Okay, bye!